Hello and welcome to another episode of Flying High with Flutter. I am your host, AllenWyma. Today I'm with somewhat of another fellow Asian out here. It's actually, I forgot how to pronounce your name, so I know it's Tyler. Is it Shukert?
Shukert. Yeah, it's usually
Shukert.
like German. Yeah, Shukert.
Okay, Tyler Shukert,
Hmm.
who is who is I don't know if I could say but you are a DevRel, so
Yep,
developer
yep.
relations, I don't know, we call it expert or what, this is called DevRel at
DevRel is just DevRel at Supabase.
DevRel Supabase.
Yeah.
Um, we were just kind of catching up about how I basically spam the hell out of their Discord channel to try to find some people. And Tyler was lucky enough. Well, I was lucky enough to get in touch with you from somebody else, I think. And
Yeah.
I said, I got the Flying High with Flutter podcast. We want to get somebody from Supabase on to talk about, what is Supabase because it's just overshadowed by Firebase, and I wanted people to know about it. So I'm kind of really a big proponent of like, okay, yeah, we got Flutter, but what about like React Native? Maybe we should have somebody on here to talk about that. So we had somebody on the past talk about that. But Supabase is doing really interesting stuff. Like that's the one thing I have to say is they're doing really cool stuff. And I think this is a great chance for you to talk about why people should take a look at Supabase and what you guys are up to and what makes you guys different than say AppWrite and definitely Firebase. So maybe you can go
Hmm.
ahead and just start off by introducing yourself.
Yeah. Thanks, Alan. So again, I'm Tyler, and I work as a DevRel at Supabase, and especially on the Flutter or Dart and Dart side. So I do also maintain the Dart and Flutter library for Supabase, and I do the DevRel stuff. So I make it, and then I pretty much promote it or make example apps for people to get started with Flutter and Supabase. And for those who don't know what Supabase is if you go to our website, supabase.com, you'll see the first headline saying Open Source Firebase Alternative. And basically that's what it is. I'm assuming a lot of the people that are listening to the show already knows what Firebase is, but what it is, it's a collection of two different tools to easily create uh, apps, basically in matter of you know minutes, hours, basically create apps really quickly. And at Supabase, we have four main features. We have auth, we have database, and then we have the real-time capability, and we have the storage, and we have the functions that was only released less than a month ago. So, we have all the components to build a sophisticated apps, and you don't have to worry about managing your own backends or anything.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Like that's why people really want to work with like Firebase. But not to mention Google is really pushing people to actually use Firebase, right? How do you
Yeah.
like how do you really like differentiate yourself from Firebase? I mean, because Supabase it, you have this only product, which is not a bad thing, but it's like
Hmm.
nobody really knows who is Supabase, right?
Right. So the biggest difference between Firebase and Supabase, I would say, is the database component. So auth, storage, and functions all do somewhat similar stuff, but database, Firebase has their own NoSQL database. They have real-time database or Firestore, whereas Supabase we use Postgres. So as you may know what Postgres is already, but Postgres has history of 30, 40 years. It's been battle tested in many ways. It's powering a lot of the enterprise applications that are live these days. And what we want to do at Supabase is we don't want to create a new solutions from ground up. We want to utilize the open source tool that are already available out there, and we just want to make it accessible to people. So today, Supabase should be the easiest way to get up and running with Postgres database. All you need to do is you have to log into you have to go to your Supabase website and log in using your GitHub account, and in a matter of minutes, you have your own Postgres database where you can play around with. So yeah, the database part is the biggest difference between Firebase and Supabase, where you get to use Postgres and SQL. Which is everybody's favorite, I think.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of curious about how that stuff actually works, right? Because with
Hmm.
Firebase, I mean, it's so abstracted from you. And now you're saying that you can actually use SQL, right? Isn't it
Mm-hmm.
also dangerous when you use that? Because like Supabase, I mean, I mean, of course, you guys should be having people do the right thing, right? And make sure that they're not putting themselves in harm's way with like injection, SQL
Right.
injection.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you guys let people safely use SQL and have it in a way that people would like to use?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we have two mechanisms of okay, so in terms of like writing information to the database, we use this library called Postgres. So that's REST, Postgres and REST combined together. Postgres is a library that provides REST API on top of Postgres database, and what it is we include Postgres right off the bat once you start up your Supabase project. But what it is it creates a bunch of REST APIs to read, write, update, or delete any other information that's stored in your Postgres database safely, so you don't have to worry about SQL injections or malicious attackers attacking your databases or anything. Postgres takes care of all the heavy loading, so you just have to use you can just use Supabase and without worrying too much about server management or securities or that sort of stuff. And in terms of like security, this is kind of the same thing with Firebase as well, but we have our own mechanism to have your database be secured. So Firebase has a thing called security rules where you write, which user can write or read from which part of the database. Supabase has something similar. We call it row level security, and row level security is actually not a feature that Supabase invented, but it was already a feature on Postgres itself. So we're just, again, providing easier way for people to get started with like fully utilizing the capability of Postgres.
So it's called row level security, is that right?
Row level security, yep.
Okay, I thought you said roll over security. That's why I was doing
Sorry,
some
yeah.
searching at the same
Row
time.
level
No, it's
security,
okay.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, row level security. I've never heard of that before. I'm a huge proponent of Postgres. I love it so much, but maybe I should take a look at this because I am running into some issues of, how do you say this, of making sure that data is not kind of handed out to anybody, right? So maybe this could be something
Right.
useful for me.
Yeah, certainly. Row level security is certainly exactly a feature for that. So what it is you define who can access or who can write to which role within Postgres database. So you can say like, if this person is authenticated with this user ID, then this person can only create a role with their user ID in it or something like that, or this person can only view the contents of this chat room if that person is like inside the chat room. You can do pretty sophisticated stuff with it. And we actually have an official YouTube video with my buddy John explaining the power of role level security. So I can share that video link afterwards.
Thank you, because you're going to save me some typing. As you could see, I'm trying to figure out. I thought this is pretty interesting, right? So maybe I'll have to take a look at this. So maybe you guys can really say that you guys really build your whole system around Postgres, it seems like.
Yeah, exactly. That is the idea. So Postgres is so powerful that we don't have to do much. We just have to make it easier for people to access all those features.
What do you say to people who say, hey, you already said it, right? Postgres is powerful. It's got a lot of stuff in it, but you know what? I think I need that real-time aspect, right? I'm not going to get that from Supabase because as it says in the name, Firebase has a real-time database. Like, why would I want to use Supabase if I need that real-time aspect? What do you say to that?
Actually, we do have a real-time capability. And this is how actually Supabase started out. So Supabase started out as our founders creating this real-time engine around Postgres database where you could subscribe to basically real-time changes, kind of like Firebase, you could subscribe to real-time changes on the Postgres database. And eventually that became Supabase. They added different open source tools on top of it and created the modern Supabase. But so right off the beginning, we already had real-time engine. And actually, end of last year, we added row-level security to real-time engine as well. So before that, we were not able to securely retrieve data using the real-time engine. Like if you wanted to use the real-time engine, then all the data was exposed to the public. But I think it was December last year or something, we added row-level security to real-time engine. So you can pretty much create a private chat room or private chat app or private, any kind of private real-time app using Supabase, just like Firebase. Real-time is already there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I did know about this part, right? Because if I remember correctly, that part is actually built using Elixir, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the powerful part because that's the reason I first heard about Supabase is because the real-time engine. Like I remember seeing that and I was like, this is cool. But then the part that confused the hell out of me was like, I was like, wait a minute, what is this? Why is this thing in Go? Why is this thing in JavaScript? What kind of Frankenstein is this? Because there's you guys. I understand your guys' model because I talked with somebody else on the Elixir Mix podcast, and he really described it as like you guys try to take the best in class piece of software out there and integrate into your machine, into your ecosystem. Let's say not your machine, your ecosystem. So the real time piece, you guys feel that Elixir is the best thing for that. But what else are you guys using also in your tech stack too? So you're also using Go and
so
JavaScript, right?
we're using Go, and for storage we're mainly using TypeScript or JavaScript to power the storage piece. But I think that's about it. Go, TypeScript, and Elixir. Yeah, but as I think it was Chase, right, that joined your podcast the other day. Yeah, as he mentioned, we just try to use if there's an open source tool that does what we want to do pretty well already. Like for example, our auth system is a fork of Netlify's auth system. So we just fork it and use it. Don't it's better to use systems that are already out there and has been battle tested, and then building something from the ground up. You just want to basically promote open source and use open source projects as much as possible.
Which is also quite interesting too, because you guys you're not like Firebase in that you're all like proprietary and everything's by yourself. Like you guys basically say, hey, everything that was, because you guys, so you have a couple of different things, right? One is that you guys do your own hosting. You just pay a very small fee if you even reach that fee. I think there's a free plan for 5 projects or something. I can't remember now.
It's 2 projects per person, but then you can have 2 organization per person, so it's like 4 projects per person, kind of. But yeah, we do have a free tier.
Yeah, you have the free tier, which can last for I think for most projects, right?
Should
I don't know.
Be,
like, do you have an idea about what kind of scope we're looking at? Because the thing about Firebase is like it's easy to start, but you always hear that as soon as you start to scale, then that's when your bankroll is just gone. You start seeing zeros in your account.
That's one of the scary thing about using cloud softwares, right? Well, whether it's Firebase, GCP, or AWS, you get this surprising bill once in a while because you didn't know there was a spike in traffic, or you kind of screwed up one of your coding and you're creating a bunch of unnecessary reads or writes or something like that. And we wanted to minimize that at Supabase. So our pricing models, what we try to do is we try to make it predictable. And so if you go to our pricing page, you can see that we have a generous free tier, which precisely says it includes this, and that. And then if you go to the paid plan, it'll still precisely say it'll include this, and that. And you can always set a limit to you can always set a limit to if, let's say, auth usage exceeds this amount, then I wanted to basically shut down instead of just keep on going without any warnings or anything, because that has certainly happened to people. So that was one of the things that we wanted to make sure that people are comfortable using Supabase without worrying about their credit card bills.
Yeah, but it's kind of interesting. But your pricing model is also kind of strange too, because you only have one pricing model, and then it's contact us, right?
Yeah, so we recently updated the pricing model a bit. So we have a free tier, and let's see, I haven't been on top of the most recent pricing model, honestly, but I believe we have, right, so we have the free plan, and then we have the $25 per month plan, which is a pro plan, and then we have an enterprise plan, which is pretty much pay as you go, but you can certainly set limits to how much usage you want, so that you won't get surprising bills. But yeah, we we do have 3 tiers in free, pro, enterprise, basically.
Okay, and you guys are really trying to keep it under wraps, yeah. So that's good. You guys have a way, and you can say you can cap it, right? So that way you don't get
Mm-hmm.
surprises.
Yeah, yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea.
One of the first episodes I did on this podcast was with
Mm-hmm.
somebody talking about Firebase,
Mm-hmm.
and I really hate it with a passion because like I'm always doing database migrations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
if I have, because the thing is, when you put your app out there, it's so difficult to ask people to upgrade their app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
for Android, I think there's a way that you could push and update and force people to do it.
I think so,
But
yeah.
for iOS, I don't think you have that luxury. But like, how can I handle like if I want to make a serious data model upgrade, where like let's say that I have like a user and they have their address and their user information together, and then let's say I want to split the address. Maybe there could be multiple addresses per user. Is
Mm-hmm.
there an easy way that I could do something like that, or is it that Postgres is so separated that I never have to even think about like database migrations and handle this kind of stuff?
That's a great question. And migration is a complicated topic, especially when you combine it with mobile app development. But I think one thing you can do is, so in Postgres, you have this thing called Postgres functions, which is essentially you can have a business logic within your Postgres database, and Supabase offers a way to easily call this Postgres function. So what I like to do is I like to allocate a certain functions that's going to act like a backend. So instead of having, using Firebase, you are kind of forced to have most of your logic on the front end, which is good, and which is why people love Firebase because they don't have to write backend code. But then you encounter this migration problem with databases. But with Supabase, you can have all this logic live on the database layer, so you still don't have to like write backend code using Node or anything. It'll just live in Postgres function, and um, always update those Postgres functions to whatever you want to do, so you can easily run database migrations on behind the scenes, and just swap the logic within those Postgres functions, and your users wouldn't even know about it. So I think it really makes it really easy to do database migrations, especially if you come from a Firebase world.
Okay, so I mean, because I'm just thinking like, what would be the steps of something like that? So you're thinking like I would have to write a function where it would take in the data and then actually split it up for that user. So it sounds
Mm-mm-mm.
very similar to already what Firebase has to do, except that you don't have to pay for running of the function, right?
Right, 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 exactly. And if you wanted to do that with Firebase, and if you had that logic in the front end, then you would have to pretty much, set up cloud functions and do that, right? Which works, but I feel like that it's more of a hassle. Whereas writing Supabase function or Postgres function on Supabase is a lot easier, at least to me, it feels like. And we provide a nice interface where you can edit your Postgres function within your Supabase dashboard and everything. So I think overall, it's just a much better developer experience.
Now, is there actually ways that you could test your Postgres functions?
Great question. So like you're thinking like creating like a staging environment or something like that, right? That's one of the things that we want to work on, but we don't offer any solutions like that at the moment. So the best we can provide at the moment is you can create a separate project and set up all the data and Postgres function in that test environment. And then you can test it over there, and then if it works, you can migrate it to the to prod.
I'm just thinking like unit tests, things like that. If there's any way to do something like that.
Great question. Yeah, there's certainly a way to do that. I think the easier way to do that is just run Docker. Uh, and we have an example repo on GitHub to do some testing using Docker. Like for example, if you go to Superbase's JavaScript GitHub repo, you'll see a GitHub action automatically running tests on various Postgres features. So that's certainly one of the ways that you can test your logic.
Well, that's actually kind of brings me to another point. It's like another cool
Mhm.
thing that you guys have is we started talking about this, but actually didn't finish up the thought, which is that for as opposed to Firebase, right?
Mhm.
You guys, everything that you guys are running is actually already available. There's basically no hidden repositories. So if you wanted to run your own
Exactly.
Supabase, you can actually do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's one of the thing that I think the community loves for Supabase 4 is that they're not tied to our platform. If they wanna, run Supabase on their really sophisticated server, they're welcome to do so. And we even provide nice looking dashboard for your own self-hosted Supabase instance as well. And you get the community support. You can ask questions on the our GitHub discussion page, and you'll get an answer pretty quickly. So yeah, that's another reason why people love Supabase is that they're not tied to a certain solution.
Yeah, can we talk more about how easy is this? Like if I'm a brand new developer, right? There's so
Mm-hmm.
many resources for Firebase and it's really so simple to do. I mean, the nice part about NoSQL is that you don't have to do all these turning on a database and
Mm-hmm.
saying these are my schema fields and this is the integer, this is a whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just throw stuff into it and then you just kind of keep going on with your day, which
Mm-hmm.
I think you and I both know that that can be painful later on when you start to actually having data and you're like, wait a minute, I can't, add a number plus a string. Just doesn't
Mm-hmm.
doesn't doesn't work, right?
Yep.
So, how much is Superbase actually invested into Flutter, and how simple is it that I can actually start using it in my projects now?
Yeah, so I say Flutter is probably the second most popular libraries after JavaScript. So yeah, Supabase originally started out focusing on the web end, but I think it was January last year that they officially launched the Dart SDK. So there's many Flutter apps out there that are built on top of Supabase. I've built a few myself, and we have all the libraries to get started with Flutter. We have auth, database part, real time part, storage, and functions that was recently added. So yeah, you can get up and running with Flutter pretty quickly, and we even provide a quick starter guide for Flutter, how to get started with Supabase and Flutter. And if you Google Supabase and Flutter, it should come up at the very top. It's called Quick Start Flutter, literally called that. But you can just follow that guide to get started with Flutter and Supabase. It runs on web, iOS or Android. I there it For the most features it should work on Windows and Mac OS as well, but we are missing few features from the libraries that we use on the auth end, that some features might be limited on Windows and Mac applications, but for web, iOS and Android it should work just fine. So if you could just go to uh, Flutter. If you Google Supabase Flutter, you should find a quick start guide, and that's the easiest way to get up and running with Supabase and Flutter.
Now, basically everything I want to do, I mean, is this similar to the fact where like I could just log into Superbase and I could just say, okay, this is my schema, boom, boom, boom.
Hmm.
And then this is, the auth providers I want to use because they have that Firebase auth. So I'm guessing you have something similar, right?
Yep.
So like, is a lot of things very similar? Like if I came from Firebase and then looked at Superbase, like I would be able to kind of somehow manage like the conversion.
I'd say so. So the auth part is really similar. You just have an auth dashboard, and you can just toggle, which auth provider you want to use and which one you don't want to use. So that's really similar. In terms of database, as you mentioned, Firebase coming from NoSQL, the nature of NoSQL, it has a lot more freedom. So you don't really have to do a lot of setup other than just press that one button to create a Firestore instance, a real-time database instance. But in Postgres, obviously you have to create schema, so you have to define a column and you have to give it a type, and you have to give well, first I guess you have to create a table and then create columns on top of it. And obviously you still have to do that in Supabase, but we do provide. So there's two ways of creating tables in Supabase. One is you can actually run SQL within Superbase's dashboard. If you log into Supabase, and create a new project, we provide a nice looking SQL editor where you can run actual SQL on your Postgres database. So once you get comfortable with SQL, you can certainly create tables there. But if you're just getting started with Supabase or Postgres, you can go to Supabase's dashboard, go to the database editor, and there you can create tables and columns using our GUI. So kind of like click create table, name it, hit send or save. It'll create a table, and then you can create add column. You give it a name. You choose what type it is from our drop down menu. And it's kind of it. It's really simple. It's really simple to get started with. And I think you mentioned a really good point earlier where, Firebase has this freedom. It's really nice when you're just getting started with it, but like later on, you'll start to feel this pain, and you'll know that having a lot of restrictions actually is a good thing when it comes to software development rather than a bad thing. And I think it's really powerful that Postgres or using Supabase, even beginners are kind of forced to, write their applications in a more restricted way, and they're forced to like learn the benefits of having restrictions when they write softwares.
Yeah, I always find it easier to have restrictions, right? Because it's like if it's totally blank canvas, I'm like, oh man, I don't know what to do. But once
Yeah.
you start giving me restrictions, then I start becoming more clever. Well, this time usually it's a good kind of clever rather than a bad kind of clever. You know what I mean by bad kind of clever, right? When you're trying to write some really what you think is clever code and you end up just making it horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
But usually the restrictions definitely help me out. And I think,
Sure.
yeah, but I think that's the one thing that does make it a little bit tricky for beginners, right? Because it's like, well, integer, what's an integer? Because everybody says number, right? And number can mean also decimal too. So that's the tricky part. How do you guys handle this kind of curve where if you're trying to bring people on who are brand new, who come from Firebase even, and they're just like, listen, I want to store stuff. Like I don't care about this. Just store my stuff, right? How come Excel can work, but this doesn't work?
Right. Okay. That's a great question, and I don't know if I have a pretty answer to that. But we have various resources to help beginners get started with. We have a really large community with different blog articles on how to get started with Supabase, and we of course have a bunch of official how to get started guides. If you go to supabase.com, and we also have a pretty supportive community and GitHub discussion. So if you go to the Supabase repository, that's a Supabase/Supabase, our main repository, which has I think over 30,000 GitHub stars. I think we just passed 30,000 very recently. Anyway, if you go there, there's a discussion page where anybody's welcome to post questions regarding Supabase or Postgres or anything related to Supabase, and our Postgres experts are right there, eager to answer your questions. So, if you have any questions with like what's the difference between int2 and int4 and int8 or something like that, I mean, first it would be nice if you could do your own research, but then you can always come to the GitHub discussions and ask those questions, and it'll get answered pretty quickly. So I don't know. For beginners, I think it's just it helps to just get your hands dirty. Don't worry too much about it. You won't be able to like break Supabase in any way. Just get your hands dirty with it. Don't overthink. Just get started with it and have fun. Have fun developing.
So we have a couple of questions in the audience. So we do this live stream. I don't know if I told you that before. No, I think you already knew that. There's something in Spanish, I think.
Okay.
I'm not able to even properly pronounce that. We're talking about Supabase in production, but I wish I could reply. If it was Chinese, it'd be easier for me. Japanese is for you, right?
Yeah.
So sorry about that. But we do have another one. Is somebody from Supabase is asking, are these Supabase color plants in the background real?
Oh, you caught me, These plants are actually fake. I killed so many real plants actually recently that I felt guilty and I started going with fake plants. So yeah, those are IKEA fake plants. You caught me. That'll be it'll be hard to tell on a stream, but wow.
Oh, well, when the video comes out, be very clear that you can probably see that they're fake, maybe. I know I can't
Oh, is
really
it
see either.
that
They look,
obviously fake? Wow, okay.
those are made in Japan, right? So they got to be really good quality.
No, I think they're IKEA plans, so it might be. Where's IKEA from? Sweden, was it?
I think they're probably still assembled in China or something like that. I don't
Right,
think
I'm
they're
sure.
everything's made in China these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're actually, I do want to get a little bit back to your background. I love to talk about
Huh?
people's backgrounds because it gives people some hope that, hey, maybe I could do something interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And your background's actually really interesting because you also had the similar idea where, like, you said you were reviewing a website or something, and then, like, you looked at this and you're like, I could do this, even though you never programmed before. Is that right?
Yeah. So how I got started with programming was I was doing an internship at a local startup in Japan, and this was when I was a senior in college, between junior and senior in college. I was doing an intern there. I was doing a bunch of writing stuff, pretty boring stuff, honestly. I was writing a bunch of articles about cars for this new media that they were launching. This company was launching. And then I was looking at this CMS. I don't think we were even using WordPress or anything. For some reason, we were using this scratch-made content management system, paying a bunch of external companies a bunch of money. But anyway, I was looking at the system, and I'm the one writing articles, right? And it was just me and a few other college students writing articles. There weren't any official professional writers or anybody. And I was thinking to myself, if I can write the articles, which I'm already doing, and if I could create this beautiful looking website by myself, then I could pretty much do this whole business all by myself. And I guess those that are laughing out there, I know that business isn't that easy. I've learned that the hard way, but back then, very inexperienced me thought, okay, this shouldn't be that hard. I could just do it by myself. So I went home. I went back to college and started studying programming by myself. By the way, I don't have a computer science background. I was studying mechanical engineering in college. I had taken a C++, barely passed it, but yeah, I went back home, started studying about HTML, CSS, eventually got into JavaScript, and then found out that I need to also learn something called PHP if I want to do something more sophisticated. And that's kind of how I got started with programming. Just I wanted to do more. So I learned something, and then I wanted to do something more sophisticated, and then I learned more, and then I wanted to do even more, and then I learned more. And that's I kind of kept on going like that. And eventually I got pretty comfortable with PHP and JavaScript and everything. And I was looking for this next big thing, and back then in Japan, Ruby on Rails was this really big thing. Like everybody was using Ruby on Rails. And I took a look and thought, it's not that much different than PHP. Like the way you write things, it's pretty similar. Like I don't have that much Ruby experience, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't feel that much different. I wanted to do something more drastically different, or drastically sophisticated, and that's when I found out about Firebase. It was I think it was 2016 at Google I/O or something. Firebase back then didn't even have cloud functions. Of course, it didn't have Firestore either. It was just real-time database, auth, and a few different a few smaller components like dynamic links or what are those analytics or stuff. It was just storage was there as well. So storage, auth, and real-time database was their main thing back then. And when I first took a look at Firebase, I thought, how can I coming from a PHP and a MySQL world, taking a look at real-time database, I thought to myself, how can anyone build an application on top of this? This is there's not much you can do about it until like just anything. And I walked away, and then I still kept on hearing good things about Firebase. Firebase is gonna be big. Firebase is gonna become the next this big thing and stuff like that. So I go back and take a look, right? And I did some more digging into maybe there's something I missed in this real-time database thing, and kind of kept on digging, and didn't really find anything deep to it or missing like critical feature that I didn't find earlier. So I kind of walked away. But then eventually I said, you know what, if Google's telling you that it's gonna be this next big thing, then I don't know who's smarter, me or Google. And that's how I started using Firebase. I had doubts right at the beginning, but eventually I said, it's Google. Can't really go wrong with it. And yeah, Firebase was a great product. And here at Supabase, we love Firebase. Like if Firebase wasn't around, then Supabase wouldn't certainly been around either. Everything we do, I mean, we don't try to copy Firebase or anything, but Firebase definitely set the foundation of this backend as a service kind of industry or service. So yeah, Firebase is an awesome product, but Supabase, we try to make it better by utilizing Postgres. Yeah.
Kind of ironic because you guys are trying to, I wouldn't even say replace, but definitely give an alternative, right, to Firebase.
Yeah, certainly.
So you guys both hate and yet want to replace it, yet don't want to leave it or something. I don't know. That's a very odd. It's like you don't know if you want to eat chicken nugget or pizza for lunch, right?
We don't hate it. We certainly, Firebase is an awesome product, like I said. But we just wanna give people the option to use SQL on top of Firebase. If you say, people love SQL. People have hard time working with NoSQL database. So if there was a Firebase with SQL, then people love it, and I fell in love with it pretty quick. And I'm sure a lot of people would as well.
But what brought you? So you worked on Firebase, and I did see over here you're working with Firebase and Polymer. Polymer was also a Google thing, right?
Yeah, it was a Google thing. They were pushing it pretty hard at one point. It's kind of sad that it didn't take off. I like the concept of Polymer a lot.
Can you actually talk about Polymer for a second? Because I think it's
Yeah.
kind of like a component library or something.
Yeah, it is. So it's when Polymer was first introduced, they wanted to push this new concept called web components, which is I think still used these days, but it's in a more unknown, like a hidden way kind of thing. So Google Chrome was adding a bunch of new features called web components, where you can have like a native like a component, JavaScript component or HTML component, where, like, for example, if you're writing a React app, you have this JSX with a bunch of JavaScript code, as well as some HTML and CSS code to handle the UI and everything, right? And that component is encapsulated, meaning that, like, for example, if you declare a variable within your JSX component, that variable doesn't really conflict with any of the other variables, even though if it happened to be named the same thing. And web components was this thing where they wanted to do that natively within the browser. So the idea of Polymer is kind of similar to what Supabase is doing, utilizing the tool that's already available on there. It's just Polymer's doing that on the browser, and then Supabase is doing that on the database and open source real world. But yeah, back then Google Chrome was adding these bunch of features to support web components, and Polymer was basically just a polyfill to support those web components for even the browsers that didn't have web components support back then, like Safari and older Chrome and Firefox and everything. But yeah, I really love the idea of Polymer, and I was working with Polymer in Firebase for a while. That was like my go-to tool, just because it was Google pushing it, and Firebase took off, but Polymer didn't really. It's still around, but you don't really hear a lot of people talking about Polymer these days. I think it was renamed to Lit Element, and it's still around, but honestly, the only website that I know of that's still using Polymer is YouTube.
Yeah, I do remember this, and I was actually interested in looking at it. And I do remember what you said about, like, you can have like these kind of internal variables that never get touched, and I thought it was interesting. But to me, it kind of lives on the ideas of kind of React components. I mean, I think pretty much if you know what a React component is, I think you can kind of relate to the same thing, like self-contained. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting that it did just drop off, because it seemed like also I think Firefox was taking a look at it too. There wasn't just Google by themselves; it was actually quite a few different companies. And then one day,
Yeah.
it's like everybody just forgot about it. That's what I felt like because like even I forgot about it. I now that you mentioned it, I'm like, wait a minute, what actually happened? Because like people are talking about it. It's like going to be the next big thing in web, and then the next day it's like everybody got amnesia and just forgot about it. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah. I think it's somewhat similar to, at least for me, it was kind of somewhat similar to what happened to AngularJS. So AngularJS, the Angular 1, came out as a JavaScript library, right? And then Angular 2 became a TypeScript library, and a lot of people hated that huge change. Basically, they had to rewrite their entire application. I think something similar happened between Polymer 2 and Polymer 3. The difference was pretty dramatic, even though they had like this automatic migration tool. I don't think it actually worked out really nice, and a lot of people got, kind of tired of migrating from Polymer 2 to Polymer 3, and that's how I kind of dropped Polymer and decided to explore something else. Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing too that kind of hurt Angular was like, well, I think there was a lot of questions about, well, what is Dart, and this. I think that was part of the mix, but not a huge part. But I think the biggest part was like going from Angular 1 to Angular 2, or 2 at the time, was like they were two different beasts. Like they had nothing similar. At least when I looked at it, like because I loved Angular 1, I was like, this is great. I like the scope stuff. I like all this kind of stuff. It was really cool, really easy to use. And because originally I did Backbone, and then I switched to that one, and I was like, okay. And then I think Angular 2, I'm like, wait a minute, this is like, why am I going to change? Forget about it. And then I was like, wait a
Mhm.
minute, I'm done doing JavaScript. I really hate it. Like that was a big thing for me.
Mhm.
Now what, we're at Angular 5,000 or something? It's like every week is you upgrade another
Yeah,
five.
really have no idea. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, but now to me Angular is dead. I got Flutter to take a look at. But
Mm-hmm.
you also have a pretty interesting kind of feedback on Flutter Web, right? I think you share a similar opinion with a lot of other people that it's just not quite ready yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know what'll happen in the future, but at the moment, I've seen a few Flutter Web websites. It seems like it has this problem of scrolling, especially when you have a bunch of images in your view and you scroll it, it kind of gets really slow and yeah, I think web is just a whole nother world, different from iOS and Android, and it has a lot of work to do. And I guess we'll see where it goes. But at the moment, it's really hard to use Flutter Web in production. Yeah, I think on
Yeah.
yeah.
No, yeah, I was just thinking out loud to myself. I didn't want to
Oh.
put that onto the microphone. Yeah, yeah. No, we did invite the lead PM for Flutter Web, and she's pretty upbeat about it. And it is kind of weird that Flutter Web, I mean, Web, I think was the original target for Flutter
Right.
before it
Yeah.
was even Flutter, right? And it's
Yeah. Or
interesting to see,
Dart,
like,
right? Yeah.
you see it went
Even.
back around back to Web, and then
Yeah.
like the sad part is like I could have sworn that hot code reload was actually working, and
Mm.
I don't know, maybe I was going crazy at the time, and then I asked her, and she was like, "No, no, it never worked." And I was like, "Oh, that's why it doesn't work for me, because it never worked to
Mm.
begin with, recently at least."
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
without that piece, it's like, well, how do you even do anything? Well, it's not really Flutter without the hot code reload. That's like
Yeah.
one of the pillars of Flutter.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Right.
that's a hard thing to solve, I guess, and that kind of makes some sense.
I guess I don't really know the nitty-gritty part of Flutter Web, but yeah, it'll be exciting to see what kind of future it holds. But at the moment, it's a tough one. It's a tough one to do to do anything on top of it.
So speaking of that, like how well is Supabase supported across the different platforms, right? Because you guys are, I mean, Flutter expands.
Mm.
Theoretically, I think it also works on Xbox, right? So can I use my Supabase app on Xbox?
I did not know that Flutter works on Xbox. But yeah, so we
It's supposed to support damn, I forgot the name of the platform, but some kind of way to it's Microsoft something. You didn't hear about
uh
this? They don't
maybe I
really, it's
missed
kind of
it.
like a second
Right.
tier, not really
Okay,
first
okay.
tier.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some research about that. But at the moment, I briefly talked about this earlier, but we support web, iOS and Android fully. And then for the authentication part, so when you use an external OAuth provider like Google login or GitHub login, what Flutter in Supabase does is it uses a deep link to log in users and come back to the app. And that deep link portion doesn't work currently with Mac OS or Windows Mac applications or Windows applications. So for the most part, it'll work. Like you can still make API calls and everything from Mac applications and Windows applications. But if you wanna implement like a Google Auth or something in your Mac or Windows applications, at the moment it wouldn't work. This is restrictions that we have with the underlying deep link library that we use it on Flutter. Supabase Flutter. But other than that, all the supported platforms are supported. All the platforms that are supported on Flutter is supported. So you should be able to use Flutter Web even.
Okay, so because it's sorry, I went and look up on the side is UWP, which is for Windows 10, Windows 10 Mobile, which I don't think exists anymore. Xbox One and HoloLens. So
okay.
I think this. I don't know if it's actually out yet, but they're experimenting with it. And does this work? Would this actually work on the Toyota system too?
I'd say so. Yeah. So one thing that we try to aim, and this goes for all the Dart libraries. So in Supabase, we have I believe five, right? No, 6, is it? Okay, so we have a bunch of smaller libraries composing only Dart code. So we have a library for authentication, we have a library for basic API REST API requests, and we have a real-time engine. We have a storage client library, and we have a functions client library. All these client libraries are Dart-only libraries. So as long as you can run Dart code, you should be able to run it. It doesn't depend on Flutter at all. And then wrapping all of them up, we have a Supabase Flutter library where it uses like deep links and a few other Flutter features to handle to make it easier for Flutter developers to get started with Supabase. But if you just want to use the underlying library that are created with Dart only, you can certainly do that. And as long as you can run Dart code, it should work on Toyota cars or Xbox or whatever it is.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so you worked on the you were actually working still on the
all of these Dart
right?
libraries. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that means did you guys have to re-implement the Phoenix protocol for the channels?
Yeah. That was done by one of that was not done by me, but done by someone else on the team. But yeah. That was,
Sorry, let me talk about this for a second. So because not everybody at home knows what we're talking about. So let me just kind of give some context. So for people at home who don't know, I am a panelist on the Elixir Mix podcast. I just want to say that out there so you guys know like kind of where I'm coming from. So the real-time engine that Supabase created, to say you, but not actually you in particular, but Supabase itself, the company created, is built upon Phoenix, which is like, I would say, the Rails framework of Elixir. And they have the big thing about Phoenix is that they have this WebSocket support. And so every time you join a WebSocket, you have this thing called a channel. So on one WebSocket connection, you can join as many channels as you like. And what Supabase actually did is they're actually utilizing these Phoenix channels for the real-time component library. And so it is a separate protocol, right? There's a lot of PHX, what do you call that, prefix kind of things like that. So it's not actually documented. It's not really closed source necessarily, but it's just not documented about how everything kind of works. So you have to kind of like take a look at the JavaScript library and then kind of like reverse engineer it or just change the logic over to Dart. I suppose not really too difficult, but in any case, yeah, that's what we're talking about is like in order to actually support that in Dart, you have to actually rewrite that because the only real implementation on the client side is the JavaScript library. But JavaScript to Dart shouldn't be too difficult to do because that's what Dart was made for, is to kind of replace or have a better version of JavaScript.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know a whole lot about Phoenix or Elixir, just because I don't come from an Elixir background, but I think we just use a plain WebSocket, if I'm not wrong, at least for the Dart implementation. But is that what you're mentioning with the protocol? Or is it like
Yeah.
something more
Yeah.
than just a
So,
plain WebSocket when it comes to Phoenix channels?
well, you do connect over a plain WebSocket, but when you're
Right.
actually passing text messages back and forth, like
Mm,
it's like a JSON payload. But there's a specific format and everything.
right.
So yeah, you theoretically are you, but there is a protocol that's actually going forth. Like it's like, okay, because there's like a heartbeat, make sure that you're still connected.
Yeah.
And you also have to say, okay, I want to join this channel, and it has to say yes or no, because
Right,
maybe you don't
right.
have the authority to join that channel, right? So if
Yep,
you go back to
exactly.
your talk about the chat messaging,
Role of
right? If you don't
security, yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
so I'm guessing it must build upon that somehow.
Yeah, exactly. In that part, yeah, we do have all of that implemented in our real-time Dart library. Yeah, that one might be the toughest one if if there's anybody who wants to get into open source contributions, you're certainly welcome to contribute to any of these Supabase library anytime you want to. But I'd say the real time one is the toughest one to get into, just because if you have Phoenix background or Elixir background, maybe you can understand it better than I do. But I'm not gonna lie, I did struggle with figuring out how that library is composed and like different components and like what exactly is sending and that sort of stuff.
Oh,
But
you could have just
yeah.
asked me. I mean, I didn't know you had a problem. You could have asked me. I'm pretty familiar with it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, okay, yeah. I mean, if you have any problem with that, go ahead and look me up. I don't mind to contribute to this because
Oh yeah,
I'm
that'd be
also
great.
interested in. Actually, I do use Phoenix channels
Mm.
with my Dart applications, or at least specifically
Oh,
with
nice.
my Flutter ones. So because I have a chat component too, and so I built all that. And also, whenever I want to shoot messages down, I do use Phoenix channels also. So
Mm.
every user joins their own channel, and then I just have to just make sure I target the right channel and send the
Right.
wire down, send it down the wire.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
actually, this kind of leads into another topic too,
Mm.
because you guys are implementing using presence. So presence
Yep.
is
Mm.
also Phoenix specific.
Mm.
One of the coolest things that came out a long time ago, but that's fine. You don't have to jump onto the latest stuff because it's still quite new. So maybe this, I'll give a, since maybe you're not so familiar, I can talk a little bit about this, right?
Mm.
Sorry, maybe let me steal limelight for a second just to let people know what's going on.
Mm.
So what's really, really cool and what came under the radar for me about Supabase is that they're supporting the Phoenix presence, I don't know what you call that, library or feature or something. I guess
Yeah,
it's more like a
feature.
feature.
Yeah.
So what you guys don't know about this is it's actually using something called CRDT underneath, which is basically was a conflict-free replicated data type.
Mm.
And what's cool about that is that if you ever become disconnected and reconnect, you can actually compare your your data, and it'll automatically kind of sync up again. Most of this stuff is actually done using like server to server. So if you have two nodes, two servers, if you connect the two, they have and what happens is like some people will be on node A, some people are on node B, but they can still talk to each other. But if there's ever what they call a network partition or a disconnect between node A and node B, you're going to still keep moving on, still keep doing stuff. But once node A and node B become reconnected, we have to still kind of reconnect and say, okay, these users left, these users joined. Okay, this is what happened on your side. And then they exchange this information. Then you have an updated presence. So why is it called presence? This kind of leads back to why it's called presence is that usually people use this presence library for saying who's online, who's offline. Usually who's online rather because they don't really have a way to say who's offline, but who's online, who's actually present. And you guys are actually starting to use this very recently within the last month or two.
Yeah, that was one of the main launches at our previous launch week. I think it was like end of March. Yeah, so there's gonna be more exciting stuff coming up in the next launch week. But yeah, keep an eye for our exciting update on the real time side of things.
You guys have a really, really cool demo where it's like you're showing like a Figma-esque kind of design where there's a
Yeah.
mouse cursor there and there's a person's name there. And as they're typing, then the name will change to ... This stuff is all built on Elixir and using presence. And it's like, wow, it's really fast, really quick. And the nice part is that you guys probably didn't have to do very much work at all. I mean, that was just writing all on Phoenix, I think.
Yeah, I'd say so. Or maybe one of the backend developer might kill me. But yeah, I think again coming back to the whole idea of like utilizing the tools that are already available out there, right? So we're just using the powerful tools without building anything from the ground up. We're just utilizing what's available in the community.
Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah, that's definitely true, and I'm happy to hear this too. And it's funny because you guys are already using so much stuff from Phoenix already, and I think I talked to one of your devs, and I think the big deal was that people were actually using Supabase as a real-time database, kind of, but for what we call ephemeral data. So like this user's at which part in the game or something,
Mm-hmm.
and like you guys are like, well, this is just kind of using up too much bandwidth or space or not really properly using our system.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we just use Phoenix presence and actually, you know, use what we should be using, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the exciting stuff. So I think you guys should really check out Supabase and see, if it's good for you. For me, I mean, everything sounds good. I just haven't had a need to use it yet, but I'm interested to check it out for something someday. Right now,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, nothing's coming to mind at the moment for something that I'd want to use it for. But yeah, I think it's something that could be quite exciting. I think most of my projects, I think, have like background jobs and things like that I need to kind of do a lot of crazy stuff. And I'm already using Phoenix Channel, so I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's not quite fit for some things. But I think if I have a smaller one, maybe I'll take a look at it and maybe use it.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, and now that we have functions, you can even run, someone that does have background task as well. So yeah, definitely go check out
If
Supabase.
I'm gonna be sending out like messages to or
Okay, yeah, I
hitting
guess,
web
yeah.
servers and making PDFs and things like that, that may be a little bit
Okay,
too
maybe
much for
not. Yeah,
Supabase.
yeah.
But yeah, I think some things like data processing could very well work. And when you write
Mm-mm.
your functions in Postgres, you get to use Postgres or PSQL language, right?
So we have two types of functions. We have Postgres functions, and we offer like a regular function, cloud function kind of thing. We call it uh, edge functions, but it's powered by Deno deploy. So we have two different kind of functions. We have Postgres functions and Deno deploy functions, edge functions. And Deno deploy edge functions is just a TypeScript function where you can maybe process payment. Or I think we have an example of processing payment using the Flutter applications, but basically you can handle anything that requires a backend, like a secure place to run your secure code. And then Postgres functions is where you can write um, server-side logic or database-side logic, where you want to make sure that data concurrency uh, is there or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is pretty exciting, man. I think, like I said, I think Supabase is doing some interesting stuff. I'm a little bit concerned about the Frankenstein amount of pieces put together. But I mean, if it works, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I like that you guys basically are releasing everything out open source at the same time, kind of pushing the your service, right? Because you guys have to make money. I mean, I'm more than happy to. I mean, $25 a month to a relatively busy project. Now I have to manage the servers is definitely well spent, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd say so as well. And yeah, basically everything's open source. So if you have any concerns or anything, you can always take a look at the actual source code. So source code. Uh, and we have a generous free tier. So if you want to get started with playing around with Supabase, you're always welcome to get started with it. Yeah.
So if I'm a Flutter developer
Mhm.
and I'm struggling or I want to know more about Flutter and Supabase, maybe is it okay if I connect with you, or can I connect? How can I best to get a hold of you?
Yeah, certainly. You can certainly connect with me. You can find me at uh, DSHUKERTJR. That's my handle for pretty much everything: Twitter, uh, GitHub, Stack Overflow. You can certainly connect with me. Otherwise, if you go to the Superbase GitHub repo, we have a GitHub discussion going on where anybody's welcome to post any questions. We're also pretty active on the Twitter, so if you post any questions regarding Superbase, we should be able to answer that as well. But yeah, we have different channels to support the community.
Great. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we start to sign off?
Yeah, all good on my end. I'd say if you're a Flutter developer, definitely check out the quick start guide. If you Google Flutter Supabase, it should be the one at the very top. That's like the go-to place if you want to get started with Flutter and Supabase. Otherwise, uh, yeah, keep in touch in the GitHub discussions or Twitter or Stack Overflow, whatever channel you prefer.
Okay, great. Yeah, definitely check it out. And if you're using it, please, if you can, pay the $25 a month. Let's keep this company going. And yeah, I think it's always good to have more choices rather than just Firebase. And I'm happy that you guys got this thing going. Hopefully it stays around for a while.
Yeah, thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
Bye.